Hey guys, this is Martin from Bug Bounty Service, and today I'm going to show you a reflected cross-site scripting vulnerability with some defenses, some filters in place, and we will go through them step by step on how to bypass them. Okay, so first of all, this is our challenge. You can see here, choose your image style. There's an image, and you have like gray glow. Let's set it to red glow, and then say change image, right? So what happens is you see the red glowing color around the image. So that has been done. Now let's head over to Burp and take a look what actually happened there. So we made a post request to that PHP file, and the image class is basically img2, right? So I presume because it was the second option, otherwise it would have been img1, img2, and you see it's a drop down, right? Like, so there's no really free text entry field and things like that. But that's a classical example of a client-side control that the developers think, oh yeah, you just choose something from the menu, but they don't consider that you can use a proxy like burp and then modify that request or modify that parameter, even though it's restricted on the UI. Okay, and that's exactly what we're going to do. So for that purpose, I send it to repeater first, and then I simply hit send. And let me just, like put another word in there, like for example, Martin. Okay, and then I send this, and then I look for Martin, and then I have one match, and then I basically see that my input is being reflected. The img2 Martin is being reflected here in in an image source tag, right? So you can see this, and more specifically in the class attribute, right? So what I'm trying to do now is basically see if I can use like an event handler in there to get an XSS going. Okay, so I could say like, for example, onload um, equals, and then say alert one, and then I send this, right? Okay, so simple event handler, which says like when it's been loaded, fire an alert pop-up box with the number one inside. And then I'm going to look for alert here and see what's happening. And you see that this did not work. So apparently there is filter mechanisms in place, and basically this is what I expected. Okay, so there is a lot of different so-called event handlers, and you can head over to the Portswigger website here. So there's something called the cross-site scripting cheat sheet. So first of all, you can choose tags, like, so these are all kind of different tags, like header tags and iframes and your standard script tags and options and you name it, right? So you can choose like between all these different tags here, SVG, markups, stuff like that. And then in the events, you have like loads of different events. And you can see this here. This is like a ton of events, like on focus in, on error, and sometimes what developers do, they just filter certain of these, like the most obvious ones out, right? So if we start playing here with the scenario, like for example, what if you say like on mouse leave, for example, right? And then we look for alert, and all of a sudden, hey, we get a match over here because basically our event handler was being put into that image source, right? And this looks good. And I also use like the ticks here, so I don't use the speech marks or the double quotes for the reason because otherwise I would terminate that, and then I would break the function effectively, right? So I use single quotes, and single quotes are not being filtered on the receiving end. So let's basically look at this payload in the browser, show response in browser, and see what this does effectively. So let's just put it in here. And then it should be loading my picture. If I put the mouse over, nothing happens. But if I move the mouse out, I get my pop-up. Okay, so my cross-site scripting, my reflected cross-site scripting effectively worked simply by changing the event handler. And I knew the solution in advance, obviously, but what I showed you before is you go to the Portswigger XSS cheat sheet, and then you pretty much would try them all. And this is a tedious process, so you can use a tool called Intruder in Burp as well to automate this to a large extent and to get results quicker that way. I hope that makes sense, and I look forward to see you in one of the next videos.